So I think we're moving, or should be, moving towards some kind of spiritual evolution, where we understand without having to ask why.
But why is the fundamental question, isn't it? I mean, isn't that one of the things that makes us human, is we can ask why?
Yeah, but maybe we ask too often. Maybe we should sometimes be content with just a knowing and being satisfied with the knowing without saying, why do I know?
Where does your own composure come from?
Possibly from months and months on my own in the wilderness. But I think I had it before.
As a little girl? I mean, I have an image of you in my mind from reading about you, a little girl in Bournemouth, England, reading relentlessly from Dr. Dolittle and Tarzan. And those are true stories? That's what you did?
I've still got all the books. They're still there in my room.
Is that where the imagination was formed about Africa?
Yes.
Because I read the Tarzan books when I was growing up. Well, you did something about what you grew up with, right?
Well, yes, it was a passion. And I had a wonderful mother. I attribute a lot of what I've done and who I am to her wisdom, the way she brought me up, always very supportive. She found the books she knew I would be interested in, and about animals. And when everybody was laughing at me for dreaming of going to Africa, I was 11. You know, World War II was raging. We didn't have any money. We couldn't even afford a bicycle. My father was off fighting. And Africa was still thought of as the dark continent, filled with danger. And I was the wrong sex. I was a girl. And girls weren't supposed to dream that way then. I should have been dreaming of being a nurse or a secretary or something.
Well, some young girl had dreamed of that because she grew up to be Jane of Tarzan and Jane, right?
Oh, I was in love with Tarzan. I was so jealous of that wimpy Jane. I knew she'd be I would have been a better mate for Tarzan myself. I was jealous.
You would have made a better mate for Tarzan than I would have made a Tarzan, I tell you.
But anyway, my mother never laughed at my dream. She would say, if you really want something, you work hard, you take advantage of opportunity, and you never give up. You will find a way. And that's, see, how lucky, since I'm now working so much with young people, because I could kill myself trying to save chimps and forests, but if we're not raising new generations to be better stewards than we've been, then we may as well give up. So I can go to kids living in poverty in Tanzania or inner city Bronx and tell them my story and say, follow your dreams. And they write to me and say, you taught us that because you did it, I can do it too. And that is just right.
At Roots and Shoots, your program of training young people to be active in conservation movement, that began in Tanzania,
Yes,
didn't it?
it did. Began with 16 high school students in '91, and it emerged from Tanzania as a very new sort of thing in New York for the Albert Schweitzer Centennial at the UN. That was 93, I think, 93 or 94. And that's when it started to grow, so that it's now 114 countries, all ages, preschool through university, and more adults are taking part in prisons, staff of big corporations, and it's basically choose 3 projects to make the world better. 1 for your own human community, 2 for animals, including domestic ones, and 3 for the environment, with a theme of learning to live in peace and harmony among ourselves, between cultures and religions and nations, and between us and the natural world. So youth drives it. They choose the projects.
Are those young people the source of this hope for animals in their world that you
They're
write
a
about?
large part of it. They are a large part of it. And the time is now. I mean, I've never had such, my lectures are always full. That's what's nice.
I can inspire to.
I mean, isn't it great that high school students in some inner city area will greet me as I walk in as though I were a pop star? I mean, that is so amazing, because all that they've got out of what I've done is a message of hope, and the fact that our main message is you make a difference every day, you matter, your life is important. And this is why they want to come. I mean, I've met many people who say, well, I was so depressed, and a friend said, you've got to go and hear Jane. And they come up in the book signing line, which can be three hours, it takes so long, and say, well, I'm not as optimistic as you, but at least I now realize my life has more value than I thought, and I'm going to do my bit. That's what we need, isn't it?
You have something that I know a lot of people admire. You once said that you have the peace of the forest in you. What is that?
I think, being out there in the forest all those months alone, there was a growing sense of this great spiritual power all around, something greater than me, so that you could lie and look up at the stars and feel yourself tiny, and yet somehow having this extraordinary awareness that we have as human beings of we can encompass a vague sort of feeling of what the universe is, and all in this funny little brain here. So there has to be something more than just brain. It has to be something to do with spirit as well.
I know the story, but for my audience, tell me what happened to you when you had that very powerful experience in the spring of 1974 when you visited Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris.
Yes, it was a sort of low time in my life, and there I was. I went into this cathedral, and as I walked through the door, Bach's Toccata and Fugue in G minor, which is a marvelous piece of music anyway, just suddenly filled the whole cathedral, and the sun was just coming through that rose window. And it just, so powerful a feeling that, how could this amazing cathedral, all the people who built it, all the people who'd worshipped in it, all the brilliant minds that had been within it, how could that all be chance? It couldn't be chance.
But does the meaning come with the DNA, or is it something we create out of life, as you have created meaning with your life?
I don't think that faith, whatever you're being faithful about, really can be scientifically explained. And I don't want to explain this whole life business through science. There's so much mystery, there's so much awe. I mean, what is it that makes the chimpanzees do these spectacular displays, rain dancers I call them, when waterfall dancers at the foot of this waterfall, and then sit in the spray and watch the water that's always coming and always going and always here. It's wonder, it's awe. And if they had the same kind of language that we have, I suspect that would turn into some kind of animistic religion.
You're a scientist who observes the world and reaches your scientific observations. Spirituality can't be observed, it can be felt. And yet, and you reconcile those two in your own life.
But I also had this, I told you, my mother, she would always, she said she never saw the conflict between religion and evolution. Louis Leakey, my great mentor, who's dug up early man, he felt the same. So I sort of had this. And then, yes, it all came together in the forest. But you have to remember, I didn't start as a scientist. I started as I wanted to be poet laureate, and I wanted to be a naturalist. That's how I began. I didn't have any desire to go and be a scientist. Louis Leakey channeled me there, and I'm delighted he did. I love science. I love analyzing and making sense of all these observations. So it was the perfect rounding off of who I was into who I am.
There's a poem you wrote that I came across recently as I was thinking about this interview. I had never read it or heard it before, but it is, I think, autobiographical of you. And read it for us, if you don't mind.
Okay, the old wisdom. I wondered which one you were going to choose. When the night wind makes the pine trees creak and the pale clouds glide across the dark sky, go out, my child, go out and seek your soul, the eternal I. For all the grasses rustling at your feet and every flaming star that glitters high above you, close up and meet in you, the eternal I. Yes, my child, go out into the world, walk slow and silent, comprehending all, and by your soul, the universe, will know itself, the eternal I.
Well, I took my grandson up to the American Museum of Natural History 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they have this marvelous Hall of Biodiversity. And you read there that 98% of all the mammal and plant species that have existed since time immemorial have disappeared. Yeah. I mean, extinction is a part of life. It's a part of the history of the world. So why What's special now?
Because of us, because there have been extinctions, because there has been fluctuations in climate that changes ecosystems and habitats. But since the Industrial Revolution, our human impact on the planet, our greenhouse gas emissions, our reckless damage to the natural world, our continual growth of our populations, they have had a tremendously damaging effect, which has led to the sixth great extinction, which is happening.
At the American Museum of Natural History, they do say that reportedly five times since time immemorial, we've had a speeding up of the extinction of species, and that now this is happening again, and that's why they refer to it as the sixth great extinction.
And